Being a small business owner, you have lots of highs and lots of lows. The highs are higher and the lows are lower. When I sold my first oyster was like a huge high. I remember to this day bringing those oysters into New York City on Long Island Railroad in a cooler through Penn Station. I got my first 200 oysters to market and the chef loved it and it's blossomed from there. I'm Peter Stein. I am the founder and owner of Peeko Oysters. We're located here in New Suffolk, which is in the heart of the North Fork. And I've always loved being out in, on, near, around the water. So when I got laid off in late 2015, I started to look at alternative industries that I could get involved in. And one of those industries was aquaculture, which I find absolutely fascinating. You know, as I started to learn more and more about oysters specifically, I learned that there was so much of this going on right under my nose out here on the North Fork. First of all, most oysters today that you consume out there are going to be oysters that are grown on a farm. We get oysters, little baby oysters, from hatcheries. This is the first season that we have a flupsy on as part of our operation, and that's a floating upweller system. So essentially a floating dock with some in-water infrastructure that allows us to, in a more controlled environment, grow oysters from smaller baby-sized oysters to that 3/4 inch size and then move them out to the bay. There's, believe it or not, 500,000 oysters in this flupsy here. And that's where they go into our cages and they go into the growing cycle where we then put them through the tumbler every 4 to 6 weeks. The tumbler is kind of like this cylinder that is on a slight angle, almost like a front-loading washing machine or a bingo wheel. And as the oysters go through, there are 3 important things that are happening. One is they're getting washed off, so like they're getting rid of debris that might have built up on the oysters. Number 2, they're getting sorted by size. And then lastly is as they go through this wheel, the edge of the oyster shell is actually getting chipped. And in kind of a counterintuitive way, that actually promotes the growth of the oysters. And as they pass through the tumbler and go through the sorting machine, and they go back into these cages and get redeployed back out into the bay where they continue growing. Lunch. There are a lot of fun cocktail party facts around oysters. One of them is that all oysters on the East Coast are the same genus and species. The difference between my oyster and another oyster grown in Peconic Bay, different sections of the bay have different terroir. There's a term in wine called terroir, which is a lot more familiar to people, and that's the same is true around oysters. I grow Peeko oysters. I think that there are some unique things in terms of the area of the bay in which I grow them. We are on this underwater peninsula almost, so there's an upwelling effect. I mean, you have to think about the billions and trillions of gallons of water that are flowing as the tide comes in and the tide goes out. So I think that that impacts the size, the shape, the flavor, the visual components of eating the oyster as well. I'm producing food that has a net benefit to the environment. So there's definitely a component of that that drives me with this business. I don't necessarily think about it that way every day, but the impact that I'm having on the globe is definitely a component of why I enjoy this work. I enjoy food, but I don't describe myself as like a foodie. We're creating jobs in an area that is highly seasonal in terms of the job market. And we have year-round jobs. You know, being a producer of food on the North Fork, it's a thriving community. I think a lot of people are coming here from near and far because there's amazing food being produced here. Food makes people happy, right? Delicious.